Hello and welcome once again to episode 63 of Code Completion. It's currently the holidays, so we have been recording a few episodes in advance. That way, we have something to put out there over the holidays. And as of this episode's being released, it is now 2022. And once again, my name is Dimitri, and I'm joined today by Spencer.
Hey there.
So, since it is 2022, we figured it's as early in the year as we're going to ever release an episode. So this is our chance to put out into the world our expectations for the year and our hopes and dreams for what we look forward to coming out.
Yeah. I think for me, a big thing that I am interested to kind of see is just more of the development of Swift, and that's super broad. But what I mean by that, I guess, is, for example, Swift 5 was a pretty big change. It kind of had some large overarching changes like ABI stability and kind of some more foundational changes that have been really nice. So I'm interested to see kind of what Swift 6 will bring, assuming it comes out in 2022, and just kind of I'm loving the place that we're at and getting to in kind of the Swift evolution process of it really being a more mature language and kind of finalized in a sense where Objective-C hasn't really changed in a long time. What is it, Objective-C 2.0 right now, where it kind of added Swift interop, and that's kind of the latest change.
I think that's the public version. I'm gonna spaz now, and our listeners will remember that we had an episode where we had a compiler error with the true version of Objective-C, and it's either 4 or 6. I don't remember. This is where memory starts to fail me. But yeah, so Objective-C has improved over the years, and every compiler version does bring improvements to Objective-C as well. So it's not like it's just left there at the wayside. But I totally agree with you. Like, Swift is going in fun and exciting new places.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we'll hit 6.0 this year, because if I remember correctly, they have quite a few steps to go in terms of bringing Swift up with more concurrency features until 6. So that way the transition to 6 will not be an abrupt one with like a ton of new stuff that hasn't been like battle tested. So they want to get those concurrency features into Swift 5, whatever like the dot is, and then in Swift 6 they can go ahead and hard deprecate a lot of the stuff that did not work, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And while we're on the topic of Swift, before we move on, that's one of my resolutions, because I've definitely put it off, is to actually learn some of the Swift concurrency stuff that's come out, like async await. I just haven't touched it. I haven't needed it for work. And honestly, I haven't done a lot of like on the side just for fun development to kind of polish up and learn new skills. So that's on my that's kind of on my my agenda for sure. And maybe along with that, actually getting to learning more of Combine as well, because that's something that I've barely scratched the surface of as well. So yeah, that's my resolution.
I'm worried about like jumping into Combine, because I feel like every year it gets less and less relevant.
It's kind of true. It's weird
in a way, especially with like Swift concurrency coming in. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if Combine has concurrency stuff that like fit into it or not, or if it's always gonna stay like a separate thing. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. It's not super necessary, which is a neat thing about a lot of these frameworks, is they are additive rather than requirements. So we can, just like I waited 5 years for Swift to evolve into a place where it was something that I could use, then like there's no reason to necessarily jump headfirst into a lot of these technologies unless you're interested in it. So opposite to Spencer, I like dove head straight into a lot of the concurrency stuff, especially the complicated concurrency stuff with the sequences
Yeah.
and stuff. And I learned a ton by just reading the Swift open source code to see how they were doing stuff. And it's been really fascinating. So, Spencer, I can say ahead of time, it will ruin you. So the next
I'm
time you
sure.
have to write a method in like a new API endpoint in Vapor, try doing it with the async await stuff
Yep.
and promptly be ruined because it will like linearize the entire chain of events that futures generally force upon you, and you no longer need to think carefully about if you'll need this value 5 chains later, and then
Yeah.
you need to like think about passing it in the tuple every single time, or the tuple. I always get that wrong. But yeah, like that whole mental conundrum, which
Yeah.
like you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to think about it anymore because it's just a variable in scope at that point, which is like super super neat.
Yeah.
So yeah, trust me, the next method you need to write in Vapor, just go ahead and use the async await stuff because Vapor supports
right.
it now.
Yeah.
And it's fine if that's the only thing that needs to use it. But it will be game changing.
I think that's why I'm saying I'm so excited about it, yet I haven't touched it, is for Vapor specifically. Like, I don't really write much async code at work, so that's not a huge deal. But yeah, dealing with futures and promises and kind of stripping that out is going to be amazing. So that's my resolution. Hold me to it, both Dimitri and the listeners, because I really do want to learn it. And next time I write an endpoint, I'll do it with async await and be ruined forever, and then promptly rewrite the entire API to all use async await, which honestly probably not a bad idea. So
I mean, for those that do kind of follow along with the Swift evolution stuff, especially on the server, basically, even though the async await stuff is a tad less performant than just using like raw futures and promises from Neo, the suggestion from basically everyone that's maintaining server stuff at the moment is just jump on the async await bandwagon right now. Don't keep using the Neo stuff because it's only going to get better from this point forward in automatic ways. So if you are using the async await stuff from now, you can now get compiler warnings if you're doing it wrong, which you don't get with
that's
the
so cool.
futures and promises and stuff like that. So although those warnings are not on by default for good reason because they're not ready yet, you can get a lot of help if you do turn them on, and you can learn about like where your thought process was kind of falling apart previously. You can make use of actors, which are like automatic locking objects with all of this, and it will just all work. So the suggestion is to kind of go all in. In terms of like how much better is it than your old code, I am currently kind of migrating in my professional work a lot of encryption code over from Objective-C to Swift. And I shared some of the improvements that I was able to get along with the help of a lot of the open source libraries that I made. Like a lot of the code kind of moved into that, but those are very general purpose. And the actual encryption code went from, I don't remember, it was like 1,000 or 2,000 lines to get everything working in the way that it was supposed to work, because I needed to buffer things and keep track of state and know where I was previously, and then wait for new data to come in. Like it was a streaming decryptor. All of that turned into just 100 lines of code that is super linear.
Wow.
Like very straightforward. It's like, hey, I need a 4-byte int to know how many bytes to read. Done. Await that. And then once that's ready, the code will continue to the next step. And it will do this next piece. And then once all of that is done, it will just return that decrypted block, and then it will just restart on the next one, waiting for it to come in. all of that is like now possible in a really readable way. Not all of it is built into the system. Like I needed to use some helper libraries, which I built just for that purpose. And I don't want this episode to become like an async await episode because that's not what its goal is. But I'll link to them in the show notes. But it is really nice to be able to use these higher level concepts now in a context where it will be compiled down to super optimal code.
Right.
And that I am like super thankful for. So
Definitely. So what about you? What are some like expectations or goals that you have?
so expectations. I am super duper extra looking forward to the next generation of Pro Macs that Apple will come out with because we have seen the tip of the iceberg, which may be 2 or 4 times faster than it is.
Yeah.
So I am super excited to see what the M1 Max Duo or M1 Max Quadro, whatever they're gonna call these things. I really want to look to see like what those things are capable of, and if like an iMac Pro comes out that has just the same M1 Max in it, I like that's neat, I guess. But I'm kind of uninterested because I have that exact same setup performance wise in a laptop form factor, and I'm happy with that. But if something comes out with like 2 M1 Max chips or 4 M1 Max chips and there's a lot more RAM, I will be very heavily tempted. Not that I'm like needing RAM at the moment, but more RAM is always welcome RAM in my book.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about you wanting to even get like an upgraded version of an Intel Mac Pro. So having like the Jade 4C die
I'm not interested in that
version.
anymore. The
Yeah.
M1 Max has
Oh, have you? Okay,
convinced
okay.
me.
That's fair. No, that's totally fair. Yeah, I mean that's true. The performance difference is huge, and having used these for what I don't know 2 months or something now, it's pretty sweet. So, all right, well, good to know you're off the Intel bandwagon. I am
I just
like
bought a new one. No, I'm just kidding.
I oh I'm sadly like on the train of hoping that at least Intel Macs are supported for a little more because I have my dear Hackintosh that's still running, and I want it to be supported for at least maybe 1 or 2 more versions of Mac OS. So that's maybe a hope as well for 2022.
Yeah, for those that don't know, like Hackintosh relies on Apple supporting Intel.
Right.
If Apple does not support Intel in its operating system and it's just ARM instructions, then there's no hope for building a Hackintosh at that point because not only does the board need to be made by Apple, which is what Apple basically checks for when they run the operating system. Other than that, it's like, hey, once the board is good and if the CPU and the GPU are supported, then no complaints there, and it will just run. But not only will the board need to be supported, the CPU will need to be supported, and good luck emulating that support in any like reasonable way. You can always build an emulator. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, or you just need an ARM chip, which no one has a good ARM chip other than Apple, really. So
Yeah, not even
that's
close.
also out of the question. Yeah. So Hackintoshing I think is on its last legs, and to be honest, Quinn from Snazzy Labs put out a video a couple days ago from when we're recording this, which is like he made his last Hackintosh because I think we're all at the point where we're like, yep, Apple Silicon is the future. It works great. There's no reason to build a Hackintosh because you can get amazing performance with Apple hardware now.
Better performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely, of course. And I mean, you're paying the Apple tax, but it's well worth it in this sense where it's custom silicon. It's actually running great. It's not just like an Intel chip thrown into a MacBook chassis. So there are way, way, way less benefits of building a Hackintosh. And if you're thinking about it, I'd probably discourage you because it's a lot of time and effort every time you want to update macOS. So honestly, it's definitely a good thing. But there's like a place in my heart always for Hackintoshing because it allowed me to have a really good Mac for a lot less money when I had a job that was not, I couldn't afford my own MacBook Pro. So,
So I'll save my 2022 resolutions for the end because I have a few.
okay.
But another thing that I'm super looking forward to in 2022 is going to be Blender GPU support on the Mac.
Yes.
Because if you've been following along with it, which I have been like judiciously, like anytime there's a new commit, I'm like, ooh, reading that. There is a lot of cool things that are coming to Blender in terms of the backend render, which is a ray tracer. And that backend render has not supported Macs for the past several years. So being able to like use Blender on the Mac and have something that renders in a realistic amount of time and not hours is going to be super welcome. And I am definitely looking forward to that.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we've talked about it a little bit. Want to get into 3D modeling. I don't know if Blender's the right way to go. I mean, it's free and that's awesome, but I would do 3D modeling mostly for like 3D printing things. So I don't know if like Blender's super suited to that, or you'd have to get something like Fusion 360, but that's pricey. 3D software other than Blender is very, very expensive.
Especially when Blender is free. I mean,
yeah. Yep. I agree.
It's rare that free software is so well maintained and loved by a community. I mean, like, you don't have to use Sketch, for instance, to make UIs. You can use GIMP. Right. But GIMP is not necessarily the hallmark of, like, a good experience. Whereas Blender, like, over recent years, has been getting a lot of UI overhauls and simplifications and modernizations that are really standing out.
And professionals use Blender.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally a professional level product.
Exactly.
Really
and
product
that's because people
free.
are paying for it. People are paying for the development to continue, whether that's through large sponsorships or not. So I think it's great that Blender is where it is, and it's even better that we can start using Macs for it, because up until now, like, it would run on a Mac, but good luck using it in that environment.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that is kind of potentially going to come out in 22, I guess this is an expectation and hope episode, is the very long rumored Apple goggles, glasses for AR, which I think is kind of interesting. Ever since like ARKit came out, it's been like a thing, but
Coasting.
also it's been very much coasting. It's been just like it's there, but other than like the games that you see in the keynote presentations every year, I haven't really seen much with AR since like 2018, 2019 or so. So that'll be interesting. I'm sure you know a little bit more about it than I do, kind of what's going on in the runnings right now.
All I've heard is that the first generation device will be way better than the second generation device in terms of like build quality and stuff, as they usually are. And it will have an M1 in it.
Okay.
Which sounds really neat when you consider that most other VR goggles in the space don't necessarily have super powered chips that run them.
Yeah.
So that's all I know. I don't think it's going to be glasses. To be clear, I think it's most definitely going to be kind of like a VR like headset. However, we'll probably have pass-through cameras, so you can enjoy an AR experience through them. But I don't think they're going to have anything ready where you have transparent lenses that you can go ahead and like project stuff off. Because I don't know, have you ever used the Microsoft? I forget what they're called. HoloLens?
No, I haven't.
So that works in like a super dim room, and the field of view is like this little square in the middle of your view. So anything that's cut off by it is like super unnatural.
Sure.
And like, believe me when I say I'm used to stuff being cut off. Like, I have glasses. This part is blurry. This part is blurry.
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain amount of like cutoff that your brain just can ignore, and that was not at anywhere near that cutoff. So I don't think they're gonna have the glasses unless they really did pull like an Apple Watch moment where they do have the technology like way before anyone else can really figure it out and get that working. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
I think that makes a lot more sense to me as of like an AR headset, AR VR style headset. Um, just because like yeah, glasses seem like still so futuristic to me. Uh, I don't know. I mean, when did Google Glass come out in like 2012 or something? And that was like this tiny little thing in the in the corner of your eye. HoloLens is super cool, but again, like you said, super limited. So unless they've had this thing coming for 6 years or something, it would be crazy for them to kind of jump all the way to glasses. But like a headset, definitely I can see that coming. And I think there are other headsets. I maybe the Vive or the whatever Steam's is. I don't know that have
It's hard to keep up
cameras.
with them.
I know, but they have the camera, so you can walk around with it, and it passes through vision, and so that seems definitely possible. Um, Again, I think my biggest thing, and maybe I'm just not very interested in the technology to begin with. In general, I don't know, is I don't understand a lot of the point of it. I guess
Mm-hmm.
I had a an Oculus Rift, like the first version of them. But one thing was I would get motion sick because it wasn't a very fast refresh rate, and two, I couldn't wear my glasses with it, so I couldn't see very well unless I
Mm-hmm.
put in contacts, and I don't like contacts. So I think I've just been a little bit turned off of kind of AR VR headsets. So I just haven't looked into it much. So
Yeah, there's a lot that you have to get like perfectly right.
yeah,
Like high refresh and faster than 120 by high refresh. You need to have high pixel density, otherwise everything's a blurry mess.
yeah,
You need to have all sorts of things because our eyes can see a lot of detail when it's really close to our face. But not everyone's eyes. Like Spencer and I need glasses, and wearing glasses under goggles sucks. I
it
can tell you that
sucks.
much. If you've ever done like skiing or snowboarding and you need to put the goggles on, it's like your temples here hurt by the end of the day because it's like squeezing.
Yeah.
And not to mention, you take your goggles off, and your glasses go flying into the snow, and for good luck finding them at that point. Very specific memories that have happened more than once. um, but the whole concept of like AR, I think, can be super cool if it can be pulled off appropriately. Like for instance, like I would say 15 years ago, I don't know when these came out. I don't even know who makes them. And they don't seem to be made anymore. But I bought some ski goggles for a stupid amount of money back then that have a little like prism right underneath the eye, like right here. So if you look down, you can see it. It's not in your field of view per
Mhm.
se of the goggle, but if you look down, you can actually see it, and it's projected like a few feet ahead of you. So it's not like something that your eyes need to change their focus on. And it's a little tiny screen, and it will show you like how fast you're going, stats on your
Oh,
jump, kind of like the Slopes app, but like way before the iPhone, like right when the
sure.
iPhone became a thing, not like when it was able to measure any of this useful stuff. It has GPS in it, so it can like track all that, and it will like plot internally the route that you took, so then you can plug it into a computer and you can see it. Like none of that stuff works anymore because like technology moves on. But it still works to tell the time and to show you the speed and to show you like your jumps and stuff like that. Like that all still works because it's like a self-contained device. And yeah, I've had that on like my ski goggles for like 15 years, and it's been awesome. So I can definitely see the use of like AR from that point of view. But that's when you have like the rest of the world joining you in the
Yeah.
experience. It's not when it's like, oh, you are cut off from the world and then adding the world back in
Yes.
a way. So the first version may be a toy in that regard, just like the Apple Watch was kind of a toy, like the first ones, and it took a few years for it to get good, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, interesting to think about. I mean, I remember when Google Glass came out, or it was announced. It was never really released, but like the concept of, you had these, I guess what you would call nowadays like influencers wearing them, and it would say what the weather was, and like it would be super cool if it was basically an Apple Watch just on your face, and it said, "Hey, you just got a text or whatever," and you can "Hey Siri" and whatever, and that would be super cool. I just personally can't see it coming out in, like you say, in this first version. Maybe it's more of a toy, to get to the point where like I could get Apple prescription sunglasses, prescription glasses that you can't really tell, but it's got a screen in it or it's projecting somehow onto the lens and I'm able to interact with it. That would be super cool. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, to anyone that does not like wear prescription glasses all the time, let me like let you in on a dirty secret. Unless you buy your glasses super cheap from like a no name nothing, if you try to get a named anything, like these pair of glasses, $400.
Yeah,
I don't pay $400 for them, but that's what you have to pay for them if you want to buy it from like lens crafters or whatever, because it's all owned by like one mega corporation. That's going to be very sad when Apple also comes out with $400 glasses that can like project stuff in front of you and you can interact with, because it's going to be a joke comparatively. It's not like this costs $400 to make. No, the lens costs maybe $10 to actually fabricate custom.
it's just a monopoly.
That's about it. Yeah, it's a totally like broken system that we have, at least in the U.S. I don't know about the rest of the world. Asterisk. But yeah, glasses are already stupidly expensive. Apple can come out with something that's the same price and completely
I will not blink
be
an
okay.
eye. Yeah.
It's if I have to pay double this to get fancy super glasses where I can like see things and like be all 3D, like when 3D came out in theaters and you're like, I can reach for the fish as it floats by me. Like that trick that every 3D movie would have is at one point something's going to fly out of the screen. And hopefully they limit it to once per movie. But you never know. It might happen over and over again. So every time I go see a 3D movie now, I relive my childhood by reaching out and making a joke of the situation that we're still stuck in 2020 and 2019, because I haven't seen movies since then. But yeah, like I think that would be a no-brainer once the technology does come out. I think there was a lot of freaking out when Google Glass came out because it had like a camera on it and it's like people's privacy and stuff. However, like this is a super good camera and like it goes with us everywhere in bathrooms and non-bathrooms and private spaces, and it's just become normal. Like Google Glass was unfortunately too early, and if they had waited a few years, maybe no one would have said anything, because the little tiny dinky camera on that thing would have not even been as good, and like no one could reasonably make the argument that, oh, they're taking a picture when I don't know. It's like, yeah, I can take a picture when you don't know too, into the jacket pocket, like it's no longer a concern that we can reasonably fight. I would say, like in countries like Japan, for instance, they have a funny law that says that any digital camera has to make a noise because there are unfortunately creeps on trains that when the train is packed, they would kind of slip their phone under at arm's length and take pictures up skirts, which is not a thing that any reasonable person should ever do. So therefore, like camera software in Japan has to make a loud, audible shutter noise anytime like a picture is taken. And on non-iPhones, you can customize this to be whatever weird sound you want. So you can have someone like yelling like in No Theater kind of thing, whoa, to get the picture taken. But iPhones just have the normal shutter sound, and I found it super striking because I didn't even remember what the shutter sound sounded like.
Right.
And you can disable this by changing the region on your phone, even if you buy in Japan. Anyways, like I think that as a society, we've gone used to the fact that we are being surveilled at every moment of time. And that's just part of life now. You don't need to be paranoid about putting black tape on your computer because someone else's computer is like capturing you, anyways,
Right.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. To kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here, did you see the Ray-Ban Facebook video sunglasses that came out a couple months ago?
Yes, but I haven't heard anything about them. Have anyone like commented on the
I
privacy
I
stuff?
think
I
there
mean, this
was
is a
a
worse company than Google. Like now, having access to
totally,
stuff.
and maybe that's why there was like I do remember there being like a little bit of backlash, like Facebook is like the company that you would least like to have, access to video or kind of run video through, however it works. So I don't know. I agree with you. I definitely am on the side of like, yeah, I mean, you've got Zoomers that are like making stories on TikTok and whatever 24/7. Like everything is being documented nowadays. Um, I don't know. I think there will be a little bit of that debate still, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally see that there is much of an issue. Like you say, you've got a phone and you can take videos of anything you want anytime and no one asks for permission for that. So realistically, there's not really much of a difference.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe it's just waiting for a company like Apple to make it ubiquitous. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Apple
Yeah.
Watch is like the first device that I noticed completely normal people have because it's just like on the wrist and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like out there for people to notice and they are everywhere. And like those don't have a camera, so maybe no one's brought anything up there. But I'm sure once Apple comes out with AR glasses that actually look like glasses, that may become a thing where people can become like reprehensive. Or maybe their glasses don't even have a camera. Maybe they just have a LiDAR sensor so they can sense everything
That's
that's in
fair.
front of them. But they can't take a picture unless you bring up your phone and they can like beam over that image over to the glasses. Like there's all
Yeah.
sorts of ways that they can get around this without like ever stepping on that privacy landmine,
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I agree. And honestly, I don't even think I would care too much to have a camera in my glasses. Like I would rather take a picture with my phone because I'm sure the sensor and the
Mm-hmm.
lenses are going to be.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it needs it to like get the telemetry of like
Oh,
where it
sure.
is and
That's
stuff like
fair.
that.
Or you could have like those I don't know what they call them. I guess really you would realistically use something like a lidar as opposed to like a depth sensing, 2 megapixel camera or whatever that some phones use. So
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, I think that would be a good way to not skirt it, but just completely avoid it outright. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like all I really care for, like on my Apple Watch, the best part of it is just that I get notifications and I don't have to pull out my phone. So even if it just did that, show me the weather, like as a V1, I'd be stoked. I think that
Mm-hmm.
would be awesome. So,
Okay, so I don't think I have any more expectations. You?
nope. Let's hear your predictions now.
Okay, so not in terms of predictions, but resolutions.
Oh,
So
sorry, resolutions. My bad.
so you had one, and that was to get into Swift Async Await.
Yep.
Do you have any others?
Um, I no, I don't. I'm really bad at New Year's resolutions.
A wise person once said, "Just stay away from the resolutions because you're not going to attain them anyways."
It's kind of how I feel about them.
Um, so in terms of my resolutions, I have a few that I'm kind of looking forward to. The first one is I want to actually learn how to use like something like Blender to get into 3D art because I'm just really interested in it. And have always wanted to play around with something like that, but have always felt super intimidated by it.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I've used Cinema 4D back when I was like 8, like on
Wow.
ancient Mac OS 9 kind of systems, Mac OS 8 probably or 7. Actually, I don't think it came out on the 7s, but it definitely ran on the 9s and maybe early Mac OSs. So I've used that before. I've used Maya like on single occasions, and the most
Sure.
I've ever done is like managed to make a donut because that was like a built-in shape. And the ultimate irony of that is that like the number one tutorial on YouTube to learn how to use Blender is how to make a
Just
donut.
donut. Yeah.
But how to make a much better looking donut than anything I could have kind of figured out on my own by clicking. Because these pieces of software are like super complicated. So really want to get into that. That's like my first New Year's resolution. My second New Year's resolution is I really want to learn how metal works, so that way I could
Cool.
potentially use the models I make in Blender and bring them into metal to do fun stuff.
Nice.
So those are my like prime two resolutions that I want to kind of explore. And yeah, I don't know if it will happen this year, if it will happen next year. I'm going to take a very hands-off approach on like making it happen. So that way I don't stress about it, because I've gone all in on like New Year's resolutions in the past where like I'm going to draw every day, and then I spent 3 hours drawing every day because it takes a long time to draw, it turns out.
Yeah.
And I got really good really fast. Like I realized I could draw with a pencil when I didn't know I could draw with a pencil. Like that feeling of like you don't necessarily realize that you can draw something until you kind of put your hand to practice and see what it's capable of. But when I spent 3 hours for 4 weeks, I was able to pretty accurately draw what I saw, and take perspective into account and shading and all that. So like I got burned out super quickly from that, as you can imagine. But if I don't kind of take a super like hardcore approach, I feel like I can not burn myself out and have more fun with it. So as soon as Blender kind of stabilizes, so there are like alphas at the moment of it working on M1 Max, then I will probably go ahead and download it and start that donut Blender tutorial that I'll link to. So I'll start that tutorial and give it a go and see how well it goes, and then hopefully I can then take that knowledge and kind of dive into metal a little bit more and use that to make 3D stuff show up on screen, and maybe I can combine that with AR kit and reality kit, and then I'm ready for the AR goggles, and I'll be able to purchase those immediately with
It comes
no
full
remorse.
circle. It's a development tool, right?
Exactly.
It's for development.
Yep. So I just need to motivate every part of my life around those kinds of motivations, and I feel a-okay with whatever I spend money on.
Yeah, totally.
So a way of motivating self-sacrifice.
Another resolution along with that would be when they come out with the M1 Mac Pro, then that's
I just need
3D
something
3D
faster.
modeling.
Yeah, it turns out the M1 Max is like, it's good, but it's not that good.
You need like 128 GPU cores. That's really like the minimum, I think, for Blender on the Mac. That's what I've heard at least. So.
Yeah. I might need a render farm of several of them. No, I don't think I'll get anywhere near that point until I'm a multimillionaire, which I'm never going to be. So that is safely off the table. So as always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Code Completion to know when new episodes get released. And feel free to tweet at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. This is the last of our holiday episodes that we'll be recording. So we'll be back on the regular cadence after this. So you'll be able to say goodbye to my horrendous Christmas shirt by then. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who's at Spencer C. Curtis. That's SPENCRCCURTIS on Twitter, for joining me this week. My name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buñol. That's DIMITRIBOUNIOL. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.